Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, here in New York City at 12 Cloud Expo. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening if you're following this out there on the wide world web. The World Wide Web? The Wide World Web. That's interesting. It is obviously getting late. It's day one. This is the final session of the day. Great to see a good crowd. Obviously, the attraction of the show floor awaits. But before that, an even more attractive proposition, Alistair Farquharson, CTO of SOA Software, is going to bring APIs into the mix. We haven't heard enough about APIs yet today. So let's take it away, please, and give it up first for Alistair.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thanks, Jeremy. So I'm going to talk a little bit about APIs and business partnerships. And it's not immediately obvious, perhaps, to everyone in the crowd. I mean, it is a cloud conference, how APIs and what APIs have to do with cloud and how they intersect. So I'm going to try and cover some of that. And I'm also going to cover how APIs can really help you extend your business and how we're basically being forced to use APIs in the business and how the face of business is changing. So with that, I'm going to start with a bit of a look ahead. Or maybe it's not ahead for most of the people in the audience, since everyone here is pretty cloudy already. But there are basically two significant forces that are working together to change the face of business today. I'm specifically saying business and not IT, because IT seems to be going along for the ride whether they want to or not. But we have these two incredible forces, the one being cloud and cloud computing, and I know that has a lot of different flavors and a lot of different meanings, but I'll try and elaborate on that going forwards. And then, of course, there's all of the new mobile channels and device channels, the whole Internet of Things. And we're seeing how these two effects are converging to really radically change the way people are doing business. We're seeing things emerge like business leaders are making decisions about cloud-based applications without involving IT. We're seeing business leaders respond to the demand for mobile applications without necessarily consulting IT. We're seeing a lot of these things happening, and we're seeing almost an emergence of a concept that I like to call shadow IT. So there's a lot of force being put on business today and a lot of force being put on the IT department, and I think it's up to us to figure out how we're going to respond to that. I think it's up to you to figure out how you're going to respond to that. So let's look at the effects of cloud. Cloud is basically commoditizing IT, or at least a lot of it. And if you look at all of the different SaaS applications, platform as a service applications, infrastructure as a service, a lot of these things are starting to commoditize or replace things that were typically part of the internal IT department. Not only that, but we're seeing that a lot of app development is taking place outside of the enterprise. Not necessarily just your own application development, but all sorts of partners, third-party developers, people in their garage are starting to build applications using platform as a service, infrastructures and offerings out there that are leveraging or connecting to you as an enterprise. In general, what cloud is doing is it's really lowering the barrier, commoditizing, creating a way to barter or bargain between internal IT services and cloud providers out there. So it's giving business people the ability to choose between internal IT and a cloud provider. The other effect of cloud, maybe directly or indirectly, is that the whole pace of business is increasing. We're seeing how people have to invent quicker, how they have to move quicker. We're seeing the pace of technology increase. And this might be either directly as an effect of cloud, because people can sort of shed things that are not necessarily core to their business, or it might be something that the cloud is good at alleviating. So if you think about businesses that are trying to compete in this new economy, in this new stage of growth of our economy, then you can see that it's a natural choice for them to say, well, I can farm out 2/3 of my IT department and go into or use this particular cloud-based offering. Or I can get up and running so much quicker if I use this particular SaaS provider as opposed to come and ask my internal IT guys to develop something or change something. So we're starting to see that the cloud is affecting the way that businesses operate, and it's changing the structure of business and their relationship with IT. Then there's this other side, which is the effect of mobile devices and other devices, the Internet of Things. The number of mobile devices now exceeds the number of PCs. So it's only natural that a business user or a business analyst or the CEO starts to envisage that the mobile channel is going to be a very, very important channel for their business going forwards, whether it's directly or indirectly. But a secondary effect is that the number of connected devices is actually going to exceed the number of mobile devices by 2020. And that's just around the corner for business and IT professionals. It's within your career span anyway. So what we're seeing is a huge development of new channels and new partnering and new business opportunities opening up by the proliferation of mobile devices and by the proliferation of all of these connected devices. So the net effect, perhaps I'm oversimplifying it here, but the net effect is that you have a new channel emerging at the top of the pyramid. Then you have all of these different cloud initiatives going on. You have IT-owned cloud, certainly. You have private and public cloud, and it might be owned and managed by IT. But then you're starting to see other partner initiatives emerging within the cloud vendor space. And you're also starting to see other applications being built in the cloud vendor space. So what we're seeing a lot of in my world, when I go and talk to CIOs, is we're seeing a lot of people having to integrate with SaaS providers, as an example. And that one is not as exciting as potentially opening up a set of APIs to allow people to build apps on Heroku. You don't even know where they're being built. You don't even know how they're being built. But there's a whole new element or a whole new group of startups that are out there building applications based on the business functionality that you as a business are exposing. And the net effect of this is you have this shrinking internal IT. So the structure of IT and business is changing. IT is focusing on potentially its core value-added assets, the things that it can maintain agility with, the things that differentiate itself. And everything else is being farmed out to the cloud or to partners or through, through cloud and through partners. And they're using that. It's only natural that they would use those particular cloud-based initiatives, cloud-based platforms, to meet the demand of these mobile applications. So you're seeing mobile backend as a service. You're seeing all of these different kinds of platforms out there that help you build mobile applications. You're seeing customers or partners that are building applications purely for mobile devices that are purely based in the cloud and are at least software as a service. So the whole structure of traditional IT is changing. It's becoming layered in almost these three different ways. We've got a set of channels at the top. You've got a set of fairly distributed, different flavored, different colored kind of cloud initiatives, and then what's ultimately a set of shrinking core IT initiatives going on in the business. To me, I believe that APIs are kind of the tie that binds all of this stuff together. If you think about how mobile devices are going to connect to the cloud or connect to applications, they're going to be using APIs. If you think about how these cloud-based applications, SaaS providers, platform as a service providers, applications running on Heroku, whatever they might be, how they're going to connect to your internal IT systems, well, they're going to be using APIs. So the API becomes the fabric in this new structured IT architecture. Let's look at a couple of examples. I've rattled a few off. But if you think about now, if I went out, if I was an IT professional, which I am to some extent, but I'm a vendor, but if I worked for a large organization and I was trying to figure out how I was going to do, for example, a new social initiative, I wouldn't necessarily try and build a new social platform myself. I would go out and I would get some software as a service. If you look at software-defined networking, for example, there's a lot of vendors out there, large platform network infrastructure vendors that are trying to figure out how you can actually leverage their infrastructure as a platform. If you think about things like big data and context, all of these things can be provided and are being provided in the cloud. And these are things that are not necessarily going to be built by internal IT departments. If you look at the other side of the equation, you have a lot of mobile and device APIs. So you look at tablets, web applications, gaming consoles, mobile devices, cars, trucks, appliances. All of these things that we've been talking about potentially for the past 12 years are really starting to emerge. I saw a commercial, actually, I think it was last night while I was putting this presentation together. They started the car commercial with the mobile application and said, this mobile application has this great case, which is this car. So they really started with the mobile application and all the kinds of connectivity it gave you and all the apps that it gave you, and it said, oh, by the way, it's in a car, and isn't it great? You know, so we're becoming far more connected, and this concept of all of these mobile devices and all of these interconnected devices and the whole Internet of Things is really changing the way that business is looking at potential markets and channels. If you don't believe anything I've said, we can have a look at it from a different perspective. So I've used this diagram before in the past, so if anyone has listened to one of my presentations, please bear with me. But let's look at the red things in the middle. The red things in the middle is what business has traditionally paid for. So you've got a set of internal services, and that's what's in the middle of that circle, of that target, that bullseye. That's a set of back-end systems that you have within your organization. And you pay for a set of developers to go and build those applications and maintain those applications. Everything around the outside is a set of channels for the business. So what's happened is the business has invested in the past, and they have paid for those little red people over there to go and build web applications and mobile applications to basically reach 20% of the market, of the addressable market. There's just no way that they could build enough applications and enough channels and maintain that business structure or afford that business structure to reach everybody else. APIs are fundamentally changing this approach. If you go in and you pay those 3 people in the middle there to build yourself instead a set of APIs, then what happens is you have a set of developers, the people in white, who you're not paying for, that are building a set of applications in green, once again, that you're not paying for, to address a market that you couldn't address yourself. So for businesses, they're looking at how they're going to actually leverage APIs for business partnerships. They can see and they can sense a certain amount of scalability that they could get from exposing an API. If I can come up with an API that effectively exposes my core value as a business, that can be embedded in a large number of different channels, and I don't have to pay for those developers, well, that's very, very attractive. So how can I build this API, and how can I create this new channel for my business, or these new channels for my business? Before I get onto that, let's just look at a couple of examples, and these are examples of customers that I've worked with. Financial companies, for example, are using APIs to create different B2B initiatives like branded stored value cards. If you think about organizations that are putting together stored value and they're branding these for the organizations, well, there's a whole set of APIs about finding your balance and doing debits and adding value and credit to the card. All of these things need to be exposed by this business that is trying to create this branded stored value card product. Then there's things like branded credit cards that fall into a very, very sort of similar line. How do you do credit card transactions? How do you do risk management? How does a company inquire as to all sorts of things about the credit card, create new accounts, provision new cards, get replacement cards? All of these things, if a business can create a set of APIs just because they're good at managing credit card transactions, and then a whole bunch of people flocked to them and actually started buying these branded credit cards and building their applications on top of their APIs, well, then you've established a sort of an arm's length, very, very scalable business relationship with everyone in your channel. Other initiatives that we've seen is sort of pay by points, and this is web-based integration. So you might go to a storefront and you might buy X, Y, and Z using the points on your credit card. And that's a very, very sort of common scenario that we're seeing emerging more and more, and that's enabled by APIs on the back end. We're also starting to see things like micropayments APIs, and of course they've been around for a while, but we're seeing other people catch on with them. And this is all about how can you build mobile applications to transfer money or do micropayments or micro-lending. Is another interesting business initiative. If you're looking at travel companies are trying to figure out how they can outsource mobile app development. They're trying to figure out how they can integrate with all their travel partners. They're trying to figure out how they can do points exchanges with their partners, either within the same business or across different businesses to create interesting offerings for their customers. So if you look at IT and how the structure of IT is changing and the number of partnerships that businesses are looking to create with this new kind of value, the ability to build applications quickly in the cloud, the ability to get rid of a lot of the maintenance cost within your IT organization by farming it out to software as a service, you're starting to see that a number of partnerships is growing, and it's growing very, very quickly within the organizations that we're working with. Whether they're integrating with SaaS providers or app developers or mobile and device partners, they're building a lot of new partnerships. So to counteract this or to come up with a strategy that is scalable for the organization, they really need to figure out what their API strategy is and what their API platform is going to look like. So let me just talk a little bit about the API strategy, which I think is important, perhaps more important than anything else. If you look at the past 10 years at how organizations did integration, it was done backwards in my mind. So when you think about how many services and interfaces and how much messaging and exchanging you have going on between your organization and your partners, it's kind of out of control. You have a lot of different partners, and each partner has a different flavor of API or different way that they connect with you and a different way that they exchange data. And that is because organizations have really gone out and tried to cater to their partners. So their partner comes and says, well, I don't have any developers that understand JSON. I only have developers that understand EDI. So if you don't give me EDI, then I can't work with you, and tough luck. What we're seeing is that that's really changing today. What we're seeing is that the center of gravity is moving. And the center of gravity is moving to the creation of an API as a product. So in the past, organizations would think about the partnership first and the API or the integration mechanism second, if at all. They might just give it to IT and let them figure it out. The business certainly did not get involved in the creation of an API. What we're seeing now is that organizations are changing. Businesses are building APIs. I don't mean in a technical sense, but in a business sense, they are going out and they are creating an API as a product. So instead of thinking about a partner channel, and well, certainly they would be thinking about the partner channel, but they're trying to put the focus into the actual API itself and building the API as a product. So a car company may not necessarily go out tomorrow and build another car, but they would build an API and they would market that as a product. And what I mean by that is they really go out and they design it, they do research, they figure out what their partners want and need, they build an API, they market it, they support it, and they drive it as if it's a part of their business. Similar to their website. They don't have a website for every single partner. They have one website, hopefully. And that one website caters to everybody within their organization, or at least to certain large groups of partners and consumers within their organization. You don't go out and design a website for every single partner. So by the same token, people are going out and they're building one or two APIs that meet the need of their partner landscape. And it's something that's very, very well thought out, and it's something that is funded specifically to build. If I think about the past 8 years of SOA, and I know about SOA, it's in the name of the company, but if you think about SOA, the one thing that SOA really failed at doing is building services as products. And one of the biggest reasons that that failed is because services never got funding directly. So people always built a service because it was part of a larger integration initiative or because it was part of another, project. Now what businesses are doing is they're thinking, okay, I'm going to have this exploding exponential group of partners. I'm going to have a lot of partners. So how can I really manage these things? How can I create an arm's length relationship that's scalable and supports a large number of partners? Well, I need to build an API. And I need to build that API as a product. I need to put infrastructure in place. I need to train people. I need to figure out what it's going to do and how it's going to work. And I need to fund it as a product. And I think that that's a fundamental change over the past 3, maybe 4 years for those companies that are really on the cutting edge. The other thing that companies need to do within this API strategy is figure out what the new roles and the new processes are going to be. So there are new roles. We see organizations coming up with developer advocates and a whole support team to support partner and just general public developers and how they interact with their API. Because if that API is successful, and everyone hopes it is, of course, is that you're going to start getting a lot of support queries in on how to use this API and how to interact with it and what the benefits are and all of those kinds of things. So a support organization needs to be built in the same way as you would build a support organization or a toll-free hotline if you had a new car. So people are looking at these APIs as products. They're restructuring their organization, they're providing funding, and they are really building these things out with the support and marketing and business analysis and forethought that they always should have done. The second thing that they need is an API platform. And the API platform basically needs to provide a certain set of capabilities. The first one being things like analytics. So you really need to be able to measure the impact of your program. How many partners do I have, and which partner is doing the most traffic? And you need a way to figure that out, and you need a way to figure out the success of this particular channel or program. Then you need to figure out how you're going to engage with developers. And these developers might be internal to a very large organization. They might be partners, probably would be partners. The majority of the APIs that we see in the world today are B2B APIs. Or they might be just members of the public. So you might decide to create an API as a channel and just launch it. Create an open API, as we call it. And that open API is going to be hit by everyone from Joe Schmo in his garage to university students to B2B partners. So you need to be able to manage these people, you need to be able to support these people, and you need to understand the impact to the business. Then you need a set of gateway services, and this is all about how do you actually secure and protect the perimeter of your organization. You're going to be exposing APIs. They might be exposed out of that cloud layer that I had in the middle, or they might be exposed out of your core IT systems. Either way, you need to be able to secure and protect those. If you don't protect all of the cloud platforms that you're using, you're going to end up getting a big bill at the end of the month. So you need to be able to secure and protect those systems, whether they be back-end systems or whether they be cloud-based systems that you're using. Then you need to integrate. So integration is a fairly complex problem, but the way that I like to think about it is you have a whole set of back-end services. You need to somehow put those services together and expose an API. So from the top down or from the outside in, you need to figure out what your API is going to look like, and you're going to need to figure out how you're going to piece these bits together to actually create this API. What backend systems do you need to interact with? What cloud providers do you need to interact with? Where you're going to host this system? How you're going to build it? All of those kinds of things to give you that service integration layer. The biggest thing that you need to think of is how do you do it quickly? Business is not very tolerant of slowly. When you go and propose or when you go and think about how do you actually launch an API, the whole objective of launching the API in the first place is to meet the needs of partners. You can't do it slowly. You want to be able to go out, you want to expose your capabilities as quickly as possible, you want to leverage your channels, you want to build your developer portal, you want to get your analytics, and you want to get it quickly. You want to get up and running as quickly as possible. The fifth part of the API platform that I like to talk about is lifecycle management. So how do you actually make sure that you're building the APIs correctly and that these APIs are the right APIs in the first place? What is the relationship between an API and a set of services? How does change affect the environment? What applications is a change in an API or a backend system going to affect? So lifecycle management is really all about how do you manage the SDLC process and the change management processes within this larger extended development environment. If you think about the combination of internal IT, cloud-based systems, software as a service or platform as a service, and you're thinking about your partners and how they're using your APIs, it's a fairly large community or fairly large environment of dependencies. So you need to be able to keep track of that to understand what the effect is and what the usage patterns are within your environment. So this is where we come in, strangely enough. We provide an API platform, and we provide a community manager product which gives you analytics and manages developer engagement for you. So that's a developer portal. We also provide a gateway, an API gateway that gives you the gateway services and the ability to integrate your backend applications and expose services as APIs. And then last but not least, we have a lifecycle management product called Lifecycle Manager that provides you with those change management, dependency understanding capabilities within that environment. That's a little bit of what it looks like. You can brand it however you want, but this is an example of developer engagement and discussion groups that you might have. You might be monitoring different APIs or providing your developers with insight into those APIs. You'll be hosting documentation. You'll be managing legal agreements, group memberships, delegated administration, all the applications that are consuming your APIs, and managing the social aspects of interacting with your APIs and your support team within your organization. Analytics, pretty lights, blinking lights, flashing charts, etc. Gives your developers as well as your API administrators the ability to see what's going on and how well they're doing and what their most popular apps are and what their API consumption looks like. And if you're monetizing APIs, the back end of this is going to give you that ability to directly monetize APIs. Application integration. This is a matter of composing a set of back-end services or data sources and exposing an API. So the API gateway, its responsibility is at runtime actually exposing that API by integrating different back-end data sources and services sources. The Lifecycle Manager ensures that standards and practices are followed. It defines and tracks multiple APIs and different service versions and all of their dependencies. And it provisions APIs and documentation into that developer portal. So how do you actually manage what is a fairly long-running SDLC process involving legal documents, other documentation, different versions of different APIs and their dependencies? How's that all managed, and how do you get a graphical view of what that looks like? So that was your API platform. This API platform is available from us either in the cloud or on-premise or as a hybrid. So if you want to get up and running really quickly, get a developer portal up and running, we can provision a tenant in about 10 minutes, which will give you the ability to register your APIs and start managing them and start supporting your developer community. Thank you very much, everybody. My name is Alistair Farquharson. I'm the CTO of SOA Software.
Thank you, Alistair. Now, there's the real diehards. The show floor will be opening in 3 minutes, but if you asked a question now, you would obviously go to heaven. Possibly not on the spot. Anyone up for that? Oh, Alistair, this is nothing personal, because I thought that was a great presentation. Here we are, sir. What a gentleman.
Oh, thank heavens.
What a gentleman.
Hi, my name is Andre. Actually, we're one of your customers. I work for TELUS.
Okay.
In terms of exposing the cloud, so the implementation that we've worked on with you before, we've used Service Manager and Repository Manager in context of exposing SOAP-based services. We're moving to RESTful services. In your opinion, with respect to the API manager, is it better to expose RESTful services or SOAP-based services in a telco space?
You know, I think it's all about what the channel is. You know, what are the applications that are being built look like? Because if they're web-based or if they're mobile, then they have to be REST. They really do. But as I'm going to talk about tomorrow, REST is also not the be-all and end-all. You know, we have WebSockets emerging with HTML5, browser-based applications. So I hesitate to even say, you know, that one camp is SOAP and the one camp is REST-JSON. It's all about what is the actual channel, what is the device at the other end. And you might have to expose the same API with a number of different formats. So you might have to come up with a way to interact with a piece of business functionality using WebSockets or long polling or whatever the case might be, however you know, whatever the functionality is that you're building. But then you might also have to expose it using SOAP if you're looking at B2B applications that are, you know, not mobile and not devices. There's no one answer that fits the book.
I mean, in my opinion, if you expose services with REST, with JSON, you kind of lose your control of the data. I would prefer to use XML. Do you have that same opinion, or?
You don't have to lose control with REST and JSON. It's just defined in a very different way. I mean, what we're seeing is some of our customers, for example, will use JSON schema to define JSON and the structure of JSON documents. So it's all about how much you actually want to control and how far you want to take it. And it's all about how do you maintain agility while keeping control. So I think it's a balance. I think with SOAP services, it almost went too far in the one direction. And I think that that's partly because it wasn't very human readable. So I think that the consumption models were heavyweight. You know, you would have to go in, you'd have to understand XML, and some people don't. You'd have to understand WSDL, and that's a very, very small community in the world. You know, it starts becoming very heavyweight. And the change management, if you think about how do you do change management on top of schema, there's probably 3 people who know how to do change management of schema. So, and backward compatibility and all of those things. So I think that we got too bogged down on that side of of the equation. I think that the risk with REST and JSON is that they're poorly documented and there is no change control. So I think that we need to find a balance between some of the good things around change management and control that we had with SOAP and XML and bring them to the JSON world. Yeah, I prefer the simplified approach of REST and JSON. I prefer the way that it's human readable. I prefer the speed of development. It's much, much faster. So keeping those while keeping some control, especially for the production side of the lifecycle. If you're building APIs and you have somebody there who's designing APIs and they need to somehow convey that design to a group of developers who are building the API, look at something like JSON schema or look at something like a translation between XML schema and JSON.
Thank you, that's great.
Sorry, long answer.
On the dot of 0. Thank you so much. Audience, the show floor is now open. Let's thank
you.
Alistair Farquharson.